Okay, this video is going to be about COVID-19 and the quote unquote return of open houses. Now, we all know that the governor has already declared real estate as a life sustaining business, and it has been allowed to continue to operate under certain limitations. One of those limitations was that there were no open houses. That has now been lifted, assuming that the parties involved in the open houses follow certain guidelines. Now, let's talk about what those guidelines are. Open houses are permitted with groups of up to 10 people, provided that, number one, these open houses comply with the minimum requirements and guidance for gatherings of up to 10 people. And number two, that all parties agree that they are amenable to having an open house. So let's talk about requirement number one, and that is the minimum requirements. The first is to require social distancing of 6 feet or more. We all know what that is by now. We've heard about it a lot on the news. We've been given flyers on it, what have you. And we need to make sure that anybody visiting the property, whether it be the home or what have you, that they follow social distancing. Now, in addition, we're supposed to require universal masking. That means that anybody that wants to enter the property has a mask, that anybody working at the property also has a mask. Moreover, you are supposed to provide adequate hand sanitizer and encourage hand washing. If you are the realtor and working with the seller, the listing agent, this is a burden that you and the seller need to work on together to make sure that at entry there is a hand sanitizer and also at an exit point if that differs from the entry point. Additionally, you want to ensure proper sanitation. That means having cleaning all the surfaces and clean them with a sanitizer that appropriately kills the COVID-19 virus. Also, you want to limit face-to-face interactions. Even with masks, there is the possibility that the virus can get through the mask and get to another party. So we want to limit those face-to-face interactions as much as possible. As it relates to realtors and real estate agents and staff that are working on the property, meaning the people that, if you're the listing agent, you're taking there with you to help you show the property, you need to conduct daily temperature and health checks for any time you're doing the open house. Also, you need to have a not if sick work policy for all of your realtors and staff that are working the open house, meaning if they're sick, don't come to work. Don't come to the open house. Even if they think they're helping out, there's a good chance they're not, and they're endangering the people that may be there and may be visiting the property. As it relates to, again, the realtors and the staff that are going to be manning the open house, they need to have access to gloves. So you want to make sure that you have latex gloves or gloves that can cover their hands, especially if they're dealing with any sort of paper or opening doorknobs or what have you. Your realtors and staff should have access to gloves. Now, the second requirement that's been set forth by the state is that all parties agree to the open house. Well, the question becomes, what is the all parties agree requirement actually mean? Essentially, it means all parties know that the open house can involve more potential contact, more potential exposure, and that they are aware of that potential risk. So here's what I would suggest. Use the COVID-19 addendum that was prepared by the KYR whenever possible. And when I say the addendum, I mean the property viewing addendum. I would suggest putting it on your MLS listing and also posting it at the actual property. Now, if possible, before somebody's coming to the open house, meaning if another agent calls and says, buyer's agent calls and says, hey, I'm coming to that open house, you should ask them, hey, would you mind signing that addendum and scanning it and sending it to me before you get here? We are encouraged to use the addendum, but one of the requirements of the state is that businesses should ensure that employees use digital files rather than paper formats to the greatest extent possible. And I think that would also apply to the public, meaning that if the public was coming in and you had out a sheet of paper and one pen, and you were wanting people to sign it and hold the same clipboard and what have you, that could be problematic. So anything we can do to try to limit the contact of the public to the same pen, to the same paper, to the same clipboard, we want to do. So one option that we may want to look at is to post the actual COVID-19 property viewing addendum / waiver agreement. Blow it up, have it there. It talks about what you should have, what you are potentially agreeing to by entering the property, and include a sign that says, by entering this property, you agree to the COVID-19 property viewing addendum on display. And give them an opportunity to review that. Post it as many locations as you can before they come in, so that the act of coming in is essentially deemed an agreement by them. You may want to take a picture of that for your records to show where you actually put the sign up. And I know it may seem like a lot of work, but we want to make sure that we educate anybody coming in of the potential risks and also protect them from the potential liabilities as best we can while still complying with the state's guidelines. Now, the NAR has also provided us general guidance, and I've gone through that list when I'm talking about property viewing, and I've gone through that list to find which ones actually could relate to open houses. So I've broken it up into 3 sections. Things you can do before conducting an in-person showing or in-person open house. Things that you can do at an in-person showing. And finally, things that you can do after showing or viewing the property at an open house. So let's start with number 1, things you can do before conducting in-person showings. And these are recommendations made or general guidance provided by the National Association of Realtors. This one's for buyer's agents. Buyer's agents encourage buyers to narrow their property search through photos, virtual tours, and leveraging other technology to reduce the number and time of in-person showings. So if you say, look, normally you could go to a property, you could walk around and stay as long as you want, you might want to tell them, look, let's try to get a general view of the property when we get there. But let's have looked at it as much as we can via virtual tours and what have you beforehand, so that we can limit our time in viewing it. If you want to follow up with the virtual tours afterwards too, that's fine. And I would encourage that. But we want them to be in the property for as short amount of time as possible. The next recommendation is for listing agents. And that is to discuss with the seller the precautions that will be taken when showing their property and adhere to any specific requirements requested by the sellers showing the property. That's easy. We know we should do that. We should talk to them, tell them what will happen, tell them what we need to do sanitization and cleaning wise, both before and after the showing, and really discuss with them how this is going to affect them and what you're going to do to protect them as much as possible. Now, the next one, guidance is for all agents. Request that both the seller and potential buyers self-disclose whether they have COVID-19 or have exhibited any symptoms. Now, remember that COVID-19 can also be spread by individuals who are asymptomatic, meaning they're not showing any symptoms, so you still got to be cautious of that. But if you can talk to someone and say, have you had any of these conditions, dialogue could be very helpful in preventing the spread of COVID-19. Now, the next area we're going to talk about is in-person showings, what we can talk to our clients about so that they know to avoid or to understand these potential recommendations. The first one seems obvious, but oddly enough, I still see people doing it in public. Avoid shaking hands. It is a natural custom in our country. People do it on a regular basis, but remind them that they should really at all efforts avoid that. And I think it's one of those natural things that we do. If we see a hand out, we put our hand out almost subconsciously. We don't even realize that we're doing it. So we need to think in advance beforehand to avoid that. Now here's one for buyer's agents. Discuss limiting the number of persons who may attend a showing, such as a limitation of only 4 people. Why do I say that? Well, there are some families that are larger, or some families that, or groups that may want to come and bring a lot of different people. This might not be the time for that. So, what you want to do is say, on this first open house viewing, because it's not just going to be us there may be other parties, other people. It's going to be difficult for the listing agent already to kind of manage these people. Let's only bring 2 or 3 of us, or let's leave the children at home this time, and if we like the property, we'll ask for a private in-person visit at a later date. Now this next one is for all agents. Instruct buyers and others touring the home to avoid touching any surfaces in the home, such as light switches, cabinet, and door handles. A simple way to do that is, if there are closet doors and things like that you think people are going to look in, try to leave them ajar. If you're talking to your clients as a buyer's agent, tell them, look, if you see a closed door, try to avoid touching it, or try to avoid reclosing it if it's already open. It may have been left open on purpose. Listing agents try to make sure all the lights are already on so that a buyer coming in doesn't have to touch this. We want to limit the amount of touching by any buyer or agent to as little as possible. Another recommendation to all agents: instruct buyers and guests not to use the bathroom facilities at the property if at all possible. Bathrooms create their own situations. We want to avoid potential virus spread. So if you can't avoid it, try to do so. Also, to all agents, do not share phones, pens, or tablets or other personal property during the showing. You shouldn't be handing people documents. You shouldn't be handing people pens and tablets or anything else. Again, we want to limit contact and spread of COVID-19 as much as possible. Now let's talk about the third area, which is what to do after you show the property. Now, listing agents, this one's for you. Wipe down any surfaces touched during the showing with a sanitizing WAP or disinfecting cleaner. Follow the seller's guidelines on cleaning the area, and suggest the seller also disinfect the property as well. Twice done is most likely right. All agents, this one's for you. Speak with buyers outside of the property or in a ventilated area while maintaining a distance of 6 feet, or arrange to speak by phone or email. I know it's a wonderful time after you've viewed a property and the buyer's excited to really get in and lean in and talk to them about potentially making an offer and what have you. This might not be the best time for that. So think of other alternatives. Make a plan. Hey, after we look at this, let's go and do a Zoom conference or a video conference of some kind in about 30 minutes, or whatever you may do. Or let's meet at a different location that's open and ventilated, and let's talk about it there. But you really need to try to avoid squeezing in and trying to have a private conversation right outside the property or inside the property. This might not be the time for it. Also, all agents, do not provide any paper documents, and instead follow up with any information electronically after you leave the property. Normally, you may have information laid out for buyers, lots of things for them to touch and to take with them and to remember this situation. Again, this is probably not the time for those sort of documents or displays. Also, finally, all agents, use hand sanitizer upon returning to your vehicle. One of the important things about stopping the spread of this virus is protecting yourself. If you protect yourself, that's going to go a long way to shutting this down and us getting back to a regular business and a regular economy. All of these are designed to stop spreading the virus in any way possible, and yet to allow our business to grow and thrive. And we appreciate the opportunity that the state has afforded us in reopening and re-allowing open houses to occur. Thank you very much, and hopefully this will be helpful in your responses to COVID-19.